Welcome back, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss data input and output with pandas. So throughout the course, we're going to be reading our datasets from CSV files, but real-world data can come from a variety of places. And fortunately, pandas has a very robust I/O toolset that we can use. Let's see a few of them in action, and then we'll explore the rest of the documentation for them, since there's quite a wide variety of data sources that pandas can read from. But here we're just really going to focus on reading from CSVs, since that's what we use in the course. Let's head over to a Jupyter Notebook and get started. Alright, here I am at the Jupyter Notebook. I've already imported NumPy as NP and pandas as PD. I want to quickly note that inside our pandas crash course folder, if you open up our data input and output notebook, which is what this lecture is based off of, you can scroll down here and we have a link to the user guide. So really this user guide on input-output that's part of the official online documentation is the best resource. And if you go to that link, it basically has the various format types that pandas can read in from and the actual reading call and the writer call. So for example, let's imagine you're dealing with a JSON file and you want to know, how do I read in a JSON file? Well, you just come to this IO tool page and then click in here where it says read_JSON, and that basically gives you the information of the parameters you can call while you're reading in a JSON file. So how to accept it, the format of the JSON string, etc. So you can scroll down and check out all the various parameters. So this basically informs you of how to read in various data types. And it's not just reading, but it's also the output. So if you wanted to read in that file as JSON, but maybe save it to some Excel file, you can just read here to Excel, click on that, and then it'll inform you how to write Excel files to disk. So it has a lot of information there and a lot of examples as well. So really, the number one resource for you to check out for pandas input and output is this page that we link to in the actual notebook. And we have this table copied for you for quick and easy access. So we're going to first start off by learning in how to read in a CSV file, since really that's what we're going to be working with throughout the rest of the course. So a key part of this is understanding file paths. So when you're reading in a CSV file, so for example, here in Pandas Crash Course, I have some CSV files here for us to read in. Now, what we need to make sure is that we understand the location of our notebook or our Python script relative to the CSV file that we're trying to read. So you really have two options. One is to say pd.readCSV, and then as a string, just pass in the CSV file. So for example, I know there's a CSV file here called example.csv, and I should be able to tab autocomplete to confirm that it's there. So I run that, and that automatically reads in the example.csv file. But let's say somewhere else on my computer, I have some other file. So somewhere else on my computer, I say some file.csv. What's going to happen is it's going to get a file not found error. Because right now, if I just pass in this string like this, Pandas assumes that this .csv file is in the same location as either this notebook, or if you're running this as a .py file, as the .py script. So in this case, you'll get back something that says file not found error. So this also happens if you accidentally misspell the file. So if you said, for whatever reason, examples.csv and ran that, you would also get that file not found error. So if you're getting a file not found error, there's essentially a couple of ways to fix this. One is to make sure that the file is in the exact same location as your notebook. To see where your notebook is located, you can type pwd inside a cell and then run it, and this will actually report back the file path that you're currently in. So again, inside a Jupyter Notebook, you can type pwd, which stands for print working directory, and then that will report back where you're located. So you could then move this somefile.csv to this folder and then just call it as such, and then it would work again. The other option, which is probably the recommended one, is to actually pass in the full file path of the file that's located somewhere else on your computer. So that would look like this. I would say pd.readCSV, and then for example purposes, let's imagine I want the full file path of example.csv. I would essentially copy and paste its file path from here, and then add one more, and then say example.csv. So keep in mind, this command here that includes the full file path This will work no matter where this notebook or where your .py script is located on your computer. So you can always pass in the full file path. And the reason we have these double backspaces is because in Windows, the backspace, or excuse me, the backslash usually refers to as an escape character. So the double backslashes essentially indicates that we're not going to escape this. If you're working on a Mac OS or Linux-based system, you may have forward slashes there. Essentially, just follow whatever formatting PWD returns. But if I run this, no, I get back the exact same result. So I can either move the CSV file or provide the full file path. To confirm what files are available to you in your current location, inside a Jupyter Notebook, you can type ls, essentially for list, run that, and this will return back a list of all the files in your current location. Here I can see my various notebooks, and then at the bottom I can see the CSV files available for me. So keep that in mind. It's a really common question I get from students of the file not found error. Either move the CSV file to where you're currently located, or pass in the full file path. Okay, so we just learned how to read in data from a CSV file. Often, especially after performing your own data analysis on a data set, you want to save your results. So the way this works is you have some data frame, so we read in that data frame. Then what we're going to do is we say to CSV, and as a string, you can again provide a full file path if you want to save it somewhere else on your computer, or if you want to save it to this current directory, you would choose the name of your file, such as output.csv, and if you do not want to save the actual index here, so for example, by default, if this is a numeric index, I can say index equal to false, and that will not save the index. However, maybe this index happens to be something important, like the name of states. Then in that case, I would want index to be true. So let's go ahead and see an example of what happens if I save index to be true here. Recall that the very first column here currently is A, 04812. So if I say go ahead and save that index, then if I try reading it in again, pd read CSV, and I read in that output.csv, notice it automatically saves that index as some unnamed :0 column. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it adds an additional index. Now what I can do is if you take a look at the options here under read CSV, there's lots of different parameters, and you can even specify if the particular index column should be referred to from the CSV file itself. So keep that in mind. If you accidentally save the index, you can always refer to something as the index, or you can reset the index, drop columns, etc. You have all your tool sets available to you in Pandas. So that's reading from a CSV file and writing to a CSV file. And frankly speaking, if you understand how to run read CSV using Pandas, you're pretty much good to go for the rest of this course. But I want to show you just, for example, just a couple of other options. Pandas also has the ability to read tables off HTML. And keep in mind, this will only work if your firewall is not blocking this website. So if you're on a corporate network, this may be blocked. But I'm going to go to this website from the FDIC that has a list of all the failed banks. Now, typically, if you see a table on a website for a .html file, if you take a look at this page source by saying view page source or Control+U, and you scroll down here, the way HTML works to render tables is there's actually a particular tag that HTML uses. And you can kind of zoom in here and see that there's these table tags. So we have the column names, institution, city, state, etc. And then we have the various entries. What Pandas attempts to do is it attempts to read all the tables present on this HTML page. And we can do that by saying my tables is equal to pd.readHTML, and then I'm going to pass in that HTML. Again, you can copy and paste this from our actual notebook, but I run that, and keep in mind, if you get an error here saying something like LXML is not installed or Beautiful Soup's not installed, you may need to manually install those, but they do come with the environment that we provide. However, if it says something like LXML not found or HTML5 lib not found, go ahead and install those. And we mention how to install them in our actual notebook as well. So if you scroll down here, we mention that you may need to install these if you're not using the virtual environment that we provide for you. Now, if you're getting an SSL error on this particular command, it means your firewall is blocking you, and there's not much I can do from my end to help you with your personal firewall. You'll just have to figure out a way to disable it. But essentially what happens is Pandas creates this list of tables. So if we actually check the type that's returned here, it is a list, which means it attempts to find every single table on that page and saves it as a data frame. And if we take a look at the very first entry in tables, it's actually a data frame that matches up with the tables that were on that HTML site. So I can see bank name, City National Bank of New Jersey, Newark, etc., which in my case happened to be the very first entry on this actual table on this website. So keep in mind, you can read from a variety of sources. A really common one as well is reading in from SQL. So you can see here on Read SQL. This one's a little hard to show an example of because it often depends on providing a password to your SQL table. But there's some really nice cookbook examples. So you can click here on this link to cookbook examples for cookbook SQL. And then there's some other nice links here on reading from databases with SQL and then SQL documentation. And it actually links you to some really great Stack Overflow posts on how to read from, for example, an Oracle database, MySQL database, etc. So lots of great links, and I would highly recommend that if you ever have a question on how to read in from a particular source, you reference this online documentation, since it's always going to be the most recent and up-to-date resource for you. So the takeaway from this lecture really for the rest of this course is just keep in mind that we're really going to be using this read CSV capability throughout the course, pd.readcsv, and then to make sure you understand this file path and how to read in from your current file path or how to provide a full file path. All right, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.